Hey folks, Tamar Kamiankowski here, and in this screencast, I want to share a little bit about the Torah portion Kedoshim with you. And Kedoshim can be found in the middle of the book of Leviticus. Now, as usual, my goal here is not to sugarcoat the material and to show you how beautiful Torah is, but rather to share with you what I think is kind of cool about this Torah portion, whether you consider yourself religious or not, no matter what your religious background or lack of. So one thing we're going to focus on in this week's screencast is one specific chapter from the Torah portion, and that's going to be Leviticus 19. And what I'm going to show you with the text is that in a way we can argue that this one chapter from the Torah is actually like a mini Torah, that all the major teachings and themes of the 5 books of Moses, of Torah, are almost all encapsulated in this one chapter. And whoever redacted this chapter, whoever put this all together, was brilliant because they were able to bring a little bit of this teaching and a little bit of this teaching and some of these values and some of these values that are sprinkled throughout Torah and some other books of the Bible, and to put them under one rubric, to basically say, yeah, I'm into all this, I'm with you with the 10 commandments, and I'm with you with the laws about justice, and da-da-da-da-da-da-da, but the thing that is most important in all of these laws is that it is about striving to be holy, and that no matter what it is that we're doing, it's all about striving to be holy. And again, I think that this text is interesting for folks who are religious and who are not religious, because you can think about striving to be holy as striving to be the best person you can be in this world. And they've got some great strategies. So I hope you join me for this text study. Okay, so let's take a look at Parshat Kedoshim, and in this screencast, I want to focus specifically on one chapter from the Torah portion, Leviticus 19. And I'm going to begin by breaking the cardinal rule regarding slideshows and PowerPoint. I'm putting way too much text on one slide and also on the next slide. So obviously, I am not asking you to read any of this at all. Instead, what I want you to take note of is how much of the text I have highlighted. So between these 2 slides, we have the entirety of Leviticus 19. And wherever I've highlighted the text, it means that the law that is written out here appears elsewhere in Torah or elsewhere in the Bible. And just looking at this visual here, it means that almost everything that's in this chapter appears elsewhere. So one of the questions is, if it appears elsewhere, why put it together here? And another thing that's odd about this is that there is no one topic. So within this chapter, you have laws about sacrifices, laws about socioeconomic justice, laws dealing with criminal issues, laws that talk about one's kavanah, one's intention. So there is a lot of material that is kind of stuffed together into one chapter. So let's look at a few examples here. This is not necessarily the sexiest part of the chapter, but I think it's a good place to start. So in Leviticus 19, we get the following. When you offer a sacrifice of well-being to the Lord, offer it in such a way that it is acceptable on your behalf. It shall be eaten on the same day you offer it, or on the next day, and anything left over until the 3rd day shall be consumed in fire. In other words, when you're bringing a well-being offering, you can eat of the meat on the day of the offering. You can eat the meat on the 2nd day, but if something is left on the 3rd day, make sure that it is all burned up in fire. All right, kind of interesting. Now, if we go to Leviticus 7, look at the following. But if the sacrifice you offer is a votive offering or a free will offering. Okay, pause. Just to note, votive offerings, free will offerings are all subsets of well-being or thanksgiving offerings. So we're really talking about the same general thing here. All right, so if you offer this, it shall be eaten on the day that you offer your sacrifice, and what is left of it shall be eaten the next day, but what is left of the flesh of the sacrifice shall be burned up on the third day. Again, you can see that we've got essentially the same law. The language is a little bit different, and in Leviticus 7, there's actually a lot more detail. So let's assume, trust me on this, and then I'm happy to answer any questions in the comments and or offer other screencasts. Leviticus 19 knows the text of Leviticus 7 and is not taking all of the details, but is kind of taking a little excerpt out of that text. Let's look at another example. This one's more interesting. So in Leviticus 19, we have this phrase, "You shall not keep for yourself the wages of a laborer until morning." In other words, someone's done some work for you, you pay them. Don't hold on to the wages. Now, when we look at Deuteronomy 24, we have, "You shall not withhold the wages of poor and needy laborers, whether other Israelites or aliens." Aliens are really like foreigners who reside in your lands in one of your towns. "You shall pay them their wages daily before sunset." So again, you can see that Leviticus 19 seems to have kind of a summary statement of what appears in Deuteronomy 24. All right, and then the final example I want to show is at the beginning of Leviticus 19, the very kind of first laws after the introduction are, "You shall each revere your mother and father. You shall keep my Sabbaths. I am the Lord your God. Do not turn to idols or make cast or I would say kind of molten images for yourselves. I am the Lord your God." Now, if you are familiar with some biblical texts, there is a famous text in the Bible that has these elements in it: honoring parents, observing Sabbath, not making idols or worshiping them. Here we go. And it's from the Ten Commandments. And I have highlighted the parts that also appear in Leviticus 19. And so what Leviticus 19 has done is it is excerpting, taking out a few of kind of the most well-known, the most important of the Ten Commandments, and bringing it into its own chapter of Leviticus 19. So let's kind of think about this with an image here. So imagine the chapter Leviticus 19, and it has all this material in it. So what I want you to imagine is that whoever wrote Leviticus 19 knew Torah well, the other parts of Torah, and took a little bit of the Ten Commandments, took some excerpts from Exodus, from Deuteronomy. I put a couple other circles. I would add even more, and kind of brought in material that this scholar knew of from other places in the Bible, combining them all into one chapter. Now, the question is, why? If these laws are already in the Bible, why repeat them? So part of the reason is that the writer of Leviticus 19 says, yeah, I'm with you. Yes, let's definitely keep the corners of our fields without collecting the harvest, so that the poor can take something. Yes, I agree. We should not hold off on paying laborers who have worked for us. And it goes on and on. However, while all of those things are right and good laws, and the writer of Leviticus 19 certainly buys into it, what the writer of this chapter is doing is putting the whole thing under a particular framework, which is striving for holiness. So the introduction talks about striving for holiness, so that all of these things that we do, whether they are in the Ten Commandments or in other places in the Bible, this perspective, this theology says, the reason we do this is because we're striving toward holiness. And this is the introduction to Leviticus 19. Speak to all the congregation of the people of Israel and say to them, you shall be holy, for I, the Lord your God, am holy. And here I want to just point out the Hebrew because the English translation doesn't fully capture this. So, Kedoshim tihiyu, you shall be holy. Ki kadosh ani Adonai Elohechem, because I, Adonai, your God, am holy. In other words, one of the key attributes of God, according to this theology, is that God is kadosh, that God is holy. And so why are we to follow all of the commandments according to this theology? Because we, Kedoshim tihiyu, because God is saying you all should aspire to be holy. In this theology, people can actually never be holy because that is only reserved for God. But everything that we do, we should do with the mindfulness, the intention of trying to come as close to godliness as possible. Now, you might think, okay, yep, this is kind of obvious, but I just want to point out to you that there is a different theology in Torah as well, and you can find this, for example, in Deuteronomy 14. And look how different this theology is. For you are a people holy to the Lord your God. It is you the Lord has chosen out of all the peoples on the earth, and then blah, blah, blah. Notice here it says, Ki am kadosh ata. You are a holy people. So in this theology, the people of Israel are actually holy. There's nothing about aspiring to be God-like, because according to this theology, it's not just God who is holy, but the people of Israel are already holy. And why? Because God chose them as God's special people. So this is a very, very different kind of theology. So one of the things that I would encourage you to think about in your own lives is when you are engaged in any kind of religious or spiritual practice, are you doing it because you feel that it is a part of your own identity? Or are you doing it because you are trying to strive to be a better person, to be more God-like, that you are kind of aiming your sights on holiness? And so for a simplified kind of concrete example of this would be for people who keep kosher. So there are some Jews who keep kosher, and if you ask them why, they'll say, because I'm Jewish, and that's what you do if you're a Jew. It's part of my identity. Other people might answer to the question, why do you keep kosher? They might say, because it brings an intentionality to my eating. Every time I eat, I'm eating a particular kind of diet, and that keeps me mindful of whatever it is that one wants to be mindful of. So there's a lot in here. I will raise other screencasts where we can focus on different parts of the Torah portion, and even there's just so much more even to say about this one chapter.